Welcome to Touched and Empowered, a show created to empower individuals to value their lives by hosting think tank discussions that will inspire positive action. Touched and Empowered with Katie and Ace starts now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Touched and Empowered. I am Katie here with Ace, and today we have a very special guest who is on his own very special mission on informing the world. This is Russ Walsh, who has a fantastic background with all kinds of electronics, with very big, large companies. However, found out something and decided to move forward with it when it comes to our rising oceans. And one of the things that you mentioned was your book, but more importantly, you were sharing before we started the recording about the thinking outside the box, something you realized that nobody else had thought of. And if you could just go through that with us again, please.
Thanks, Katie, for the introduction, and thanks, Ace, for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. Yeah, this is a pretty big initiative and a pretty big issue. Sea level rise is something that was not that I would have had tremendous expertise in the past. As you mentioned, my background is technology. I've had a chance to work with almost every major tech company that you can think of that's been around 10 years: Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, IBM. I actually did work at more than 100 companies through my consulting over the last 20 years. But I was at GE and their technology area for a good bit of the last 10 years. And while there, started exploring things during COVID. The CEO of the company was really encouraging people to think outside the box. What can we do to make a difference? I don't care if you work in the mailroom or, if you're the CEO. If you've got ideas, put them to work. I did work on wildfire management to see what we could do as a company, because GE makes a lot of the world's jet engines and helicopter engines. And, aircraft is a really good way to fight and put out fires quickly. But that led me to research on the sea level. If you asked me 5 years ago, I didn't think this was such a big deal. But what I've seen is this maybe the biggest issue that the Earth has ever faced, that mankind's faced. We're talking about seas that could go up more than 200 feet in the next few centuries, and maybe 4 to 5 feet by the end of this century, which would have devastating consequences. So it's quietly off the radar. Most people don't know about this, and that's partly intended. There are a lot of people in the mortgage industry, insurance industry. They don't want you to know that if you bought a home in some parts of Florida, Miami, they're not going to give you more than a 15-year mortgage, because they don't believe your home's going to be viable 20, 30 years from now, that it's even maybe going to exist. So they don't want everyone in Miami panicking and selling their homes and destroying, the city and stuff. But that's the reality. It's going to happen at some point if they don't do something about what's happening with sea level rise. But I ended up coming up with a concept, which to me was kind of straightforward, but surprisingly, the top climate researchers in the world have come back and said, Russ, you got a really good idea. This might work. So what's the idea? Is that we redirect the ocean. Just like we did with the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, we take arid places like Australia, the Sahara, and there's quite a few others on the planet that are mostly uninhabited because they have no water. Well, now we got more water coming at us than we know what to do with. Granted, that'll probably be salt water to start with, but we could transform landscapes. And what you see behind me is a view of where I live in the taken a few months ago here in Northern California, east of San Francisco. But imagine looking at some landscapes in Australia that are currently just barren desert. And this is what it looks like, because we've got the water. We were able to build hillsides with the displaced land, forest, and just incredible green spaces, and radically transform the landscapes there. And not only that, but one of the things that might help reduce some of the global warming is what they call carbon sinks. So things like mangroves, coral reefs, forest, even kelp farms. The idea that we could have lakes that 30 years from now that are 30 miles by 30 miles, 1,000 square miles, and have most of that covered with either houseboats and where people live on the water, or kelp farms and things like that that are really creating great, spaces for not only people to live, but the animals, the wildlife. I mean, imagine, going to bed at night in a houseboat and you look out the window and there's a whale swimming by, right? That's the possibility of what we could see. So we could really transform this from a dire doomsday situation to kind of a boomsday, maybe one of the best economic opportunities for planet Earth in a long time if we really take it on properly.
I I know that it's something that, at least the sea level rising, only because I've heard for as long as I can remember, Venice is going to disappear because it's constantly sinking.
Yeah.
But it might not be sinking, it might just be the ocean level rising.
It's
So
both. It's a
it's
combo, yes.
both.
Hmm.
But in that case, you thinking outside the box, one of the things that's great about that is people who are so focused on the problem sometimes have, because they're so focused, they have blinders on and don't see any other possible alternatives.
Right.
And sometimes people get these great ideas, but they're afraid to share them.
Hmm.
So I applaud you for the fact that you decided to just go, because you mentioned you went to Harvard and spoke to some of the professors there
Well,
and said, hey,
Stanford, yeah,
or
Stanford
Stanford,
University.
I'm
Hmm.
sorry, my
Here in the Bay Area. No,
apologies.
it's okay. We'll get to Harvard someday too. Yeah.
Yep. But that you went and you spoke to the professors who were already doing classes or studying these problems and
Right.
said, hey, has anyone thought about this, or has it already been taken off the table?
Yeah. So yeah, and again, the response was a surprise. I mean, before I ventured into writing a book earlier this year, which should be coming out later this year, again, it's like I don't want to write a book if somebody's already kind of unpacked this and has the idea. But if you go out and look at Yale University's top books they recommend on related to sea level rise, they're all doomsday books. None of them paints a situation where we're going to have a good outcome. It's just a matter of, what do we do to buy time until it's too late and we all just have to pack up and move? And you just think of the trillions of dollars in infrastructure. If the sea rose, 2,000 years ago, an inch every decade, people could easily move, right? And move some docks and all that. There wasn't that kind of infrastructure near the water like we have today. But, a third of the world's population lives within a pretty short distance of the coast, or certainly less than about 100 feet above sea level. So the idea that we all got to move to 200 feet or above is literally could cost hundreds of trillions of dollars to do that. And it would just be a horrible thing, right? To let all these, I mean, because they're not going to move all these old refineries that are sitting around the coastline. They'll probably leave that behind and it'll all poison the ocean and make things even worse, right? So these are the things we're dealing with. So if we can get ahead of this and find that 50 years from now, maybe we at least stopped the sea from rising. Maybe we even took it down 6 inches or a foot, and to where Miami Beach at high tide still has 50 yards of sand dunes. Whereas right now they barely have anything on the backside of a hotel at high tide. Sometimes the water's actually slapping up against the hotel. So.
Yeah, it's interesting if you go back, and I have a lot of really old movies from
Uh-huh.
like the 40s and 50s. So
Right.
watching a movie of what like Miami looked like way back then,
Oh
and
yeah.
then pulling it up on Google Maps now, there's a huge differences to the amount of beach that's
Yeah.
currently available.
Absolutely. I was in Cape Canaveral earlier this year and met with some of their engineers there at the city of Cape Canaveral. And, they're like, it's a terrible situation, but we know that 40 years from now, half the homes here are not going to be viable. We can't protect them. We're adding sand on the front side just to keep the beach from completely going away, but we can't protect all the inland marshlands and everything else. So it's a hopeless situation. But you walked in and brought us hope. Right. This is the first time we've felt like, hey, there's a possibility that we could change this and we can all keep our homes and we can all have a great outcome, a couple generations from now.
Which I
Yeah,
love the hope and the positivity with this, because like you said, there were all these books that were focusing on the doomsday aspect of it.
Right.
And again, the fact that you're doing something about it is very empowering and very inspiring.
Yeah. What's
absolutely. And
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. I was gonna say, but before we hopped on this call, we we got to talk a little bit about, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about how amazing your background is, yes, in technology, but also understanding the private sector and how you can raise funding for such incredible ideas.
Mhm.
And you even mentioned how this idea, when you brought it to the forefront, people didn't even think about it. And
Mhm.
the fact that you had the courage to pioneer this idea, to even bring it to the forefront, I feel like a lot of people need to hear and listen
Mhm.
to something like this because it's so simple. And like you said, it's like you thought it was such a common sense type of thought process.
Right.
I guess that common sense isn't common anymore.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like I said, if I came up with E equals MC squared or something like Einstein, where you sat there on a whiteboard for years, like, oh, okay, I solved a really big problem. But this one, like I said, was a little more common sense. It's like, hey, we built canals hundreds of miles long, and changed the game a couple of times. This is just pure construction. We're not even having to do anything here that really hasn't been done before, but it will be an epic scale. But what's really been encouraging is I've gotten to some of the leaders of the world's largest construction companies. They've come back and said, "Hey, this could work. We're really interested in seeing if we can do something about this, because they're worried too, right? No, it's been in the back of their mind what's going to happen, who's going to do something about it, and now they realize, wow, now they can step up. They've got the idea. Now, how do we take this from a concept to reality? And I got a chance today to meet with people from FEMA, from some of the larger construction companies, as well as insurance companies, and their outcome was right now getting federal and any kind of state and local funding is so difficult under the current situation. Can you get private equity somehow? And I'm like, how much are we talking? And they're like, maybe 1 million or two. And I'm like, I think so. Again, being around all these Silicon Valley companies, I was working with Google when they were 300 employees, 24 years ago. I've seen a lot of people raise a lot of money and transform that money into literally trillions of dollars. So getting 1 million shouldn't be hard in my network. I think we could potentially get 1 billion if we need to, through some of the investors who've started the Facebooks and funded those guys. So that's exciting to know they're putting it back on me where I know, because again, uh, it is a marriage of two different worlds. I've been around government a little bit in my career, but working with people who understand that, and construction and so forth, it's really nice to see us all collaborating. It's going to take a lot of different skill sets to make this happen.
I honestly believe that. So industries have different languages, right? So politics, policy, as well as construction, if you're able to marry and collaborate within those different languages and
Yeah.
see the bigger vision of like, we really got to do something and we have an opportunity to clear the worry. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, Katie, I see Katie's face. She's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It is because
Well, I think too, in the world of what we see in media and politics today, it's really sad to see. I would just say the hatred, really, the underlying rivalry where, come on, guys, at the end of the day, a lot of us we've been friends, family. Let's put this aside and start figuring out how to solve some problems instead of just bringing the other party down. I hope this helps bridge a gap. It's like we got a problem, we got to come together on, right? I mean, sadly, if the U.S. were attacked by another nation, and we're literally have bombs dropping, we'll come together, right? We'll put the differences aside. Like we gotta help each other. Just like when you see a natural disaster, you see a hurricane, and nobody cares anymore if your neighbor is a Democrat or Republican or whatever it is, right? They lost their home, and so did I. Let's figure out what to do to help each other, right? And so sometimes challenges like this can bring people together, and I hope that's the outcome. Is that this country will quit. Just dealing with the rivalry situation and deal with a much more collaborative. We may have some differences, but let's work together on what we need to do to deal and move this country forward.
And
I'm
I
so
like the
aligned
idea
with
of,
that.
yeah, we both are very much aligned with this,
Yeah.
because it is very conflicting ideas never help anyone.
Yeah.
But having just the ability to pause and hold space to hear someone else's idea and then take a second to think about it. Is that something we thought of before? Will that possibly work? And be able to come up with something that, even if what you initially thought of doesn't turn out to be the key
Right.
problem solver, you at least got the ball rolling with all these
Right.
other people who are kind of familiar with the situation and can take that ball and run with it.
Also, yeah, also to be fair, you have a really good chance of this being a very key point to the solving of the situation. When it comes to, I think I was mentioning before we started recording, there were about 300 volcanoes, or I have the earthquake app because I live in California.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious about why the floor is moving. So there have been over like 300 earthquakes. Seismic activity is higher than normal. The sea floor on the West Coast, I believe closer to Oregon, there's a underwater volcano. The seafloor has risen about an inch. So understanding that all of this is culminating, creating higher water levels. Yes, Venice. We were told when I was younger that the Venice canals are going to sink. They're going to be gone soon.
Right.
Yeah.
I was told that Yellowstone's going to blow. Like, I was told so many of these different factors about our climate that we're all just nerve-wrackingly trying to endure it. But with the fact that you've taken the initiative to create a solution, along with having the trusted network with construction companies that are on board to do so, that's huge. It shows actually a large amount of not just leadership, but diplomacy that can really create a unifying leg to saving our generations to come.
Yes, thanks. I mean, again, this won't solve everything. There's going to be issues with climate and other things. Again, seismic stuff. This has no impact on that, right? We're not going to be able to reduce the number of hurricanes. We're not going to reduce the intensity. Although, if we can, create these landscapes that create the carbon sink, and some people believe that carbon reduction may bring things back into some degree of normal. And if so, then great. But again, that's not going to happen in overnight. It may take decades for some things to turn around. But nonetheless, when you see what's happening, where, again, reports that Bangladesh is literally losing 1% of their usable land space every year now due to sinking subsidence, as well as the sea level rise. That's drastic, and you feel terrible for those people who are being displaced. They're literally becoming nomads. Last year where they were living, they got to change again, and they're just compressing, and it's a very overpopulated country that's already struggling. Indonesia is building a brand new capital for $33 billion because Jakarta is having so many issues with water and the sea. So these are real. You can look them up. This isn't stuff that is fantasy. And again, it's not getting a lot of attention. When I talk with people about it who are not in this world of climate and sea level rise, they think you're crazy. And then you play some of these videos from National Geographic and NASA and BBC and highly reputable organizations, and they're like, oh wow, gosh, you're right, this is real. And I've got friends who live in coastal areas around the world, and they're like, 40 years ago we moved here, we never saw the kind of water situations we do now. But some days at 2 in the afternoon on a beautiful sunny day, our driveway's 4 inches under seawater, salt water. And that was never happening 20, 30 years ago. And now that's starting to become a persistent problem more and more often, and it's just going to get worse. So this is a reality. Again, it's not fantasy. And we've got to come up with a viable solution and get moving forward. And we got to work together to make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. And that is something that's really important. I feel like, so this is the one thing that I have a question about. I'm not a scientist, I understand that, but I'm very curious about. So the displacement of water usually affects the environment and the weather in those areas. I'm very curious on, are you looking to find a specialist who understands that, who
Right.
you can come in and also make sure that those cautions, the precautions are in place so that, precautions, I'm sorry, the, what do you call it? The procedures are in place to secure some safety, or of course everything has a risk to it, but I also am very curious to see, like, have these ideas been thought through to understand the security of, yes, we can displace water, but these are the other factors that it might shift in those surrounding areas.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's part of what we've taken into consideration. I did have an environmentalist not too long ago who was just pretty quick to say, this won't work and we won't support it more than likely. And I'm just like, well, let me ask you something. If there was a forest fire and there were a lot of bears in the woods and you went out and shot a bunch with tranquilizers, put them on in buses or whatever to take them to safety and save their lives, and then bring them back when this fire's, situation's gone and everything, they're like, would you still say it was cruel that we shot them with the tranquilizer dart, right? And put them in a bus and traumatized them? But at least they're alive, right? We did that. So we're going to be looking at that. And in these places where we're probably going to build this, if we let the sea rise 200 feet, all those animals will die, right? They will be displaced. They will be underwater. Their habitat will be gone if we don't do something about it. So, we've got to take some action sooner than later. But on the weather issue, that's a really interesting question. What I've learned is climate is driven heavily by oceans, much more than seas. Take a look at the Mediterranean Sea. The south side of it is very dry. There's a lot of water there, but if the winds aren't blowing from north to south to bring you moisture, they don't get much out of it. But the Atlantic and Pacific are really what change that drives the weather on the globe. So you really, there's a big difference between, ocean currents that come all the way from the Philippines to California, 8,000 miles across the ocean. They can generate a lot of moisture and climate related things. But if you build lakes that are 30 miles by 30 miles in Australia, you're probably not going to drastically change weather patterns. That's what we think, and that's basically what we see. Even the Great Lakes in the U.S., it helps a little bit. In the winter, you get the snow from the strong breezes that blow across the lake. But generally speaking, it's not as nearly as significant as being near an ocean.
Okay, that's a fair point. Thank you. So that actually ends a lot of catastrophizing Reddit posts. I can say that right now. Because the thing is about the biggest thing is, I know that a lot of people have fear around change, especially if it has something to do with their environment. You're coming up with a solution to combat a more impending doom that really is a reality. And I find that the right people in place, the right calculations, this could mitigate a lot of negative impact in the future versus just holding off until we can't do anything. So I think, honestly, this is one of the best solutions I've heard. Yeah, and I've been on a lot of different ideas with people, a lot of people moving their initiatives. But this actually, because it's been tested before, it's actually proved results.
Right.
And of course, one of my good friends, I still quote him to this day, mentions that a good idea matched with a good leader actually has the highest potential for success.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
And based off of what you're saying and how you have so much passion, and not just passion, but a collaborative mindset to really help everyone unite and move together, that shows me high quality leadership.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Always
do you have any questions? Because I
was just going to say that, Ace and I both truly believe that it's always better to respond to something and to try and get ahead of it versus react to it because you waited a little too long. And it really sounds like that a lot of thought has been put into this, a lot of connections have already been made into this, and that there's really a lot of movement already for this. And I can think of at least 4 people off the top of my head who are passionate about sea life,
Okay.
ocean health,
Yeah. Yeah.
people who are already kind of thinking in that world.
Right.
So for people that we know or that our listeners know who are
Hmm.
kind of like, yeah, that feeds into something that I'm already passionate about. How can I, maybe connect my passion with your passion? What's going to
Sure.
be the best way for them to reach out to you?
So we've got, I mean, one of the easiest ways is just say info@russwalsh.com. That's the easiest way to reach us. And we'll definitely try to respond to people who have questions. We're getting just more and more brilliant ideas. I mean, these are not all my ideas. Some of it is, the concept was, but as far as we start to break this down and we look at different things, I mean, we really believe what we're going to have to focus on is not just building these inland seas, but really how we manage water. I mean, if we've got a lot of water to figure out what to do with, I mean, there's some brilliant things happening now in different parts of the northwestern U.S. where the landscapes have just really dried out. They brought beavers back because beavers had almost been put, into extinction because they were considered harmful. And now they're realizing they're transforming these landscapes there. And what's also good about that is as they're damming up these little waterways, covering everything with water, right? That water ultimately starts to sink down into the earth, into the underground water tables, right? And that can make a big difference as well, right? So as we go forward, we're really going to need to deal with, managing waters as we're kind of been laughing about. It's like we may need everybody to build 100-foot deep swimming pool in their backyard before it's all said and done, right? And if you're like Oracle here in the Bay Area, and I've worked with them. They have this beautiful pond that they built in front of their world headquarters, and Larry Ellison has his catamaran that he won the America's Cup or a few years ago with sitting in front. But that water is probably 6 feet deep. But going forward, what if every time we dig something like that, we think of how much water can it hold, right? Let's start holding as much water as possible. Because if we do thousands or tens of thousands of these, when you build a neighborhood entrance, right? Instead of, again, that little fake pond with a fountain that's, 3 feet deep, maximize it. Every time we dig and we hold water, we do that. And then we start, perhaps beavers play a role in starting to help fill in the underground water tables again that are so dried out. So these are all ideas that people have kind of added. I didn't know about kelp farms and floating kelp farms either until, I think there was a documentary made called 2040 or something like that. Have either of you guys seen it?
No,
It's
but you're
very
on the
good.
list.
I think I saw it on a flight on Delta Airlines a few months ago. Really good, and just fantastic ideas about all types of different things that'll affect us. And those can all go into the overall solution.
That is
Mm.
amazing ideas, and thank you for about the documentary, because I'm gonna see if I can find the information on that and include that in the show notes along with your
Hmm.
email address.
Yeah.
So then that way people who are interested or have possible other ideas or who to connect
Hmm.
you to from the private sector in
Right.
reference to trying to help getting this initiative moving forward.
Sure.
Because
Or,
we really
or
do
government.
believe in getting ahead of the problem.
Absolutely.
Speaking of getting ahead of the problem, Kitty understands my mindset is like I really would look toward 10 steps ahead just before any possible problem. Katie also has a very similar mindset. Now, I think what's so fascinating about this concept that you're building, and of course the book is coming out, and we would love to, we'll drop the link in the show notes.
Mhm. Okay.
What are the two specific goals that you are focusing on now to achieve within probably the next 2 to 3 months?
Hmm. I mean, I would love to see us really connect with the media and start getting the chance for USA Today, Wall Street Journal, BBC, some of these organizations to carry this and start broadcasting this idea and letting people know about it, because people do seem to want to really get behind it, but they don't know what the possibilities are. They don't know, in most cases, that the sea is rising in a way that will affect them someday, not directly, indirectly for sure. Um, so that's my hope, is that, before the end of the year, some of these major news outlets are waking up and starting to carry it. Doesn't have to be my story, but if somebody says, hey, there are people in Silicon Valley that have come up with some ideas on sea level rise that could be game changers. Yeah, we'd love to see that move forward. We'd love to see in Davos, the World Economic Forum in January, this be a major talking point. We'd love to be keynote speakers at that. We think it's important enough. Again, this may be mankind's biggest issue we've ever faced, right? This is like, okay, we got an asteroid that's going to hit us in 10 years, and it's probably going to wipe out a third of the world's population. We better do something about it, right? That's not like a hurricane, the 75th hurricane of the year that's going to hit, and this one's going to be a little worse than the others. This is something epic we haven't dealt with. And we've got to deal with this sooner than later. So it has to get the right attention. Climate change, global warming, those are certainly have gotten so much attention in the last few years. But again, okay, what are the consequences of this? Well, if the sea rises 200 feet, that's a big problem.
Really is just finding those extra people to share it with and
Mhm.
get this moving forward.
Absolutely.
And I again applaud the insight that you had to just start asking the question, is this something that has been thought of before? And inspiring others to think outside the box.
Yeah, thanks.
And as much as I would love to continue this conversation, I have to call time.
Yeah.
Because we are coming to the end of our recording time.
Okay.
But is there any other last nugget that you would like to share before we go?
Again, just having your audience know that there's somebody out there working on this. Feel free to reach out again, info@russwalsh.com. We'll be monitoring. We'll try to circle back and take whatever thoughts and ideas you have. If you think we're totally crazy, that's okay too. I've had some naysayers recently, and I've had discussions with them, and they go, wow, you've got data that I hadn't seen, right? And they're saying, some people are saying the sea is not rising at all, and the data shows it is, and it's very hard to dispute. The question is, how bad is it going to be? How fast, right? Are we on the same trajectory or as we've been, or is it accelerating? If it's accelerating, we've really got to move quick. If it's as it was before, we still have issues. Like I said, I mean, the facts are, and you can check the reputable sources, that when they say Bangladesh is losing 1% of its usable space every year, the Maldives won't be around 20 years from now. These are real things from, reliable organizations that are really scary to think this is what we're dealing with.
Ace, do you have any last thoughts before we go?
Thank you very much for your time and sharing this with us, because honestly, it is a real problem that has been addressed, and it's incredible that you've found a solution again. I find that in the moments there is impending doom, air quotes, impending doom, those who understand and see the solution, those are the ones that not just have people's hearts in mind, but like we also mentioned how you could possibly create jobs from this. This can create so much good in the direction of this concept and the initiative that you're building. That really appreciate your time, and also coming on to also empower us with understanding a situation that seems like it's out of our scope, yet you're still tackling it no matter what.
Absolutely. Well, such a pleasure. I really enjoyed the whole conversation, the dialogue, and you two are really pleasant to work with. And I really look forward to seeing other podcasts that you have as well and following along on this.
Thank you for that. And thank you for being a wonderful guest as well, and bringing light to something that, might have been tickling in the back of our mind, but might not have been to the forefront. And it sounds like something that definitely needs to be more forefront. So on that note, thank you everyone for watching this episode of Touched and Empowered. We greatly appreciate you as always, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us. We hope that the discussion today will inspire you to take positive action in your life. Until next week, be empowered.